What up, what up, what up? Welcome to another episode of New Orleans Basketball. I am your host, Raphael Rattler, joined by my fellow middle brother, Gary G. Mother Rattler. What's poppin' with you, bro?
What up, bro? Everything's all good on this side, man. And it's been a while since we hopped on this thing, and it's crazy, man. Like time really flies, like it really, really flies. But you really get a good look at it when you realize when you're like doing podcasts and doing episodes. The NBA world, the last time we sparked this podcast up, is so much more different than where it is right now. And like I swear we've only been gone for like a week or something like that. So I mean, I love the NBA because of I'm a basketball junkie, and that's just what I love to watch. I just love to watch hoops. But just the sporadicness of the NBA and how you could have a dynasty and be like looking like a team that could rule the NBA for years to come. And overnight, things change. And that happens every single day during the season and off season. So a lot of things, the draft lottery has come and passed, but a lot of things happen in that draft lottery that's going to be very consequential moving forward. And then you think about like where the playoffs are, and obviously the second round has been phenomenal. But then now you're starting to see some of these injuries and people kind of, the wear and tear of an 82 game season. Just the things going on in the playoffs and the things that went in the draft lottery. Going to be some really far-reaching consequences coming this offseason. I think the Pelicans are gonna be square in the middle of a lot of it, rather by hook or by crook, like we like to say all here. So man, yeah, man, I'm just enjoying it, man. I'm really enjoying this second round of playoffs. I'm really enjoying the ebbs and flows of the NBA, and obviously, the W is starting up their preseason, and the games are about to start. So it's coming to an end for the NBA as far as the playoffs go, but obviously the storyline, the NBA is ubiquitous. It's going to be everywhere, and basketball is just starting because the W is about to get kicked off. So I'm all good on this side, man. Oh, one more thing. Big shout out to my niece, Jordan, for graduating yesterday, man. I'm not a father, Raph, but for you, I can understand it. That's it just warms my heart to see my nieces and nephews get loved, get raised, and proceed through life, man. And I feel like a true oak right now, man. So everything's all good on this side. How's everything on yours?
Everything is blessed. Yes, I did get to enjoy my daughter walk across the stage. That's crazy. I shed a couple thug tears on that one. But you're right. Last time we hopped on this pod, the Mavs, the city of Dallas was in flames. The Celtics were winning another championship. Cleveland was about to set the best record in Cleveland history, and all of that shit has changed. So before we jump into things and what the Pelicans have to do with all the movement, make sure you guys are following us on X, on Twitter, on TikTok. That's NO_basketball, no E. Make sure you're liking the episode below, because like you said, this is the beginning to me. Like we talked about it a little bit off the pod, like this playoffs, it feels like it's taking a long time to kind of get to the end, and like more and more players are dropping like flies, and everyone's like, but what about that off season? Because there's a lot of stuff coming on the back half of this. So make sure you guys are locked in for that. So before we jump in the lottery, surprise, surprise, something didn't go well this calendar year for the Pelicans. And they dropped 3 spots to the 7th seed. Before we even get into that, and the sky is falling, Joe Dumars said a couple things when he was first introduced, and you haven't heard too much from him since the Pelicans have been eliminated from the playoffs. He said that there was going to be some changes to the roster. There was going to be some changes to how they do things. Obviously, you're starting fresh. Brandon Ingram's no longer here. David Griffin's no longer here. Swin Cash is no longer here. A lot of moving parts so far. But then the question becomes like, well, was this roster set up for success, or was it just injuries, or was there a mixture of the two? So the question becomes like, well, is this more of a rebuild, or is this more of a retool? Because if you look at the stage, yesterday on the NBA lottery, there was one person in particular representing the Pelicans. It was Zion Williamson. Something tells me the Pelicans are not sending Zion on stage to represent the franchise if they plan to trade him in the subsequent weeks after that. And so if you're not trading BI and Zion, you're not completely rebuilding. The other part of that is Trey Murphy you just offered extension to. DeJounte Murray is not an old player and he's coming off an injury, but he's a player that's in his prime, right? That's ready to compete now. Herb Jones, he was an older rookie when you drafted him. And so if you kind of look at the core of the team, rebuilding doesn't really make a whole lot of sense because most of those guys would be ahead of the timeline of the 19 and the 20 and the 21-year-old that you would be bringing into this franchise anyway. But then you look at the fact that the Pelicans did not get Cooper Flagg. They're probably not going to get Ace Bailey. They're probably not getting Dylan Harper because they got that number 7 pick. The likelihood that you're going to find a superstar at number 7 that you could rebuild around is almost like a unrealistic proposition from that standpoint. But what I do want to bring to your attention and do want to kind of get your 2 thoughts on is the Pelicans obviously get the 7th pick, and the entire city was kind of breathe a sigh like, oh man, the disastrous year comes again. But history tells you that the 7th pick is probably going to produce a pretty good player. They may not be your superstar. They may not be, that guy that is fighting for all NBA, but there's some really good names at 7. So what are your thoughts on how the lottery shook out, other than the fact that the top 4, I just don't understand how you get there. But what were your thoughts on where the Pelicans go from now, since you're not looking at one of the top 1, 2, 3 guys in this draft?
Yeah, man, the hits just keep on coming, man. We were texting, but right before it started, and I was like, I'm nervous, and I'm gonna give you credit for something that obviously, we was talking on the podcast about. You were talking about it, like, man, every draft since these lottery odds have been flattened out, that somebody always takes a tumble, right? Like something happens where teams fall out. And, shout out to John and Michael, Terry, appreciate y'all hopping in and coming through, man. I see some of the names in there, and yes, the number 7 pick is very valuable. So, you had this, right? You called this, like something was going to happen. And if you are a New Orleanian or a person who follows New Orleans sports, then, because there was no trade to Los Angeles, the Pelicans are probably going to be the one to not get, because obviously the way to get to the number 1 pick is to trade a player to LA, right? You saw it with Chris Paul, you saw it with Anthony Davis, you saw it with Luka, like you saw everybody. If you trade them to in LA, doesn't matter if it's the Clippers or the Lakers, you go get that 1 pick. So you kind of figured if it's going to happen, we all had that gut feeling like, is it going to be the Pelicans? And obviously the Pelicans weren't the first. Wasn't the only team that dropped, right? Utah dropped, Washington. God help Utah and Washington, because at least the Pelicans can say, well, this draft pick was kind of sort of like Dyson's draft pick, right? Like you didn't come into the season thinking that you were going to get this pick. Like you just kind of fell into the pick, and then you try to do everything you can to try to make that pick better. But like the Pelicans were a victim of circumstance, not of talent, which I said at the earlier this season. The reason they were in this circumstance was because of this draft lottery, because of circumstances. Because Zion was hurt, because their entire team was hurt. Whereas Utah and Washington, even if they tried to compete, I don't know if they would be, if they would have any much better luck. Maybe some better luck, but not better luck. So they all took a tumble as well. So when you think about the Pelicans and you think about what happened, first of all, this team wasn't going to go like I've been preaching it. So this isn't news to anybody who's been listening to this podcast. Cooper Flagg is incredible. He's an incredible player. He's not Victor Wembanyama. Like he's not, I don't think he's like that guy, right? Like the number 1 option, day 1, ready to contribute and maybe do some things that you might have never seen before. I think he is the LeBron James of glue guys in his first year or whatever. The Pelicans are going to go as far as the people who are already on the roster, take them. Whether they had pick 1 or had they had pick 10, That is what's going to determine what happens with the Pelicans. Zion determines. Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, DeJounte, the guys that are on the roster, in my opinion. So when you think about this 7 pick, and you think about what this does, for me, I don't think it changes a lot for the Pelicans because, again, they didn't come into this season. They didn't trade for DeJounte Murray saying, all right, so look, we got DeJounte in here. We're gonna extend trade. We got Zion in here. We got CJ. All right, tank a season, starting on day 1. They didn't think that. It just fell into the lap. So I don't think it changes a lot. What I do think changes a lot is the circumstances around the draft lottery, the Giannis situation, the Spurs jumping up to 2, the Mavs jumping up to 1. Those things have fallback consequences with the Pelicans. And again, this is what I talk about with the Pelicans being, kind of center of a lot of this stuff, because, Dallas has a question in front of them about what to do with this number 1 pick, because you have a team built around a bunch of 30-year-olders, and you have potentially one of the best available players to trade for in a while, since Luka was available apparently, and Giannis, who kind of fits their timeline even more, right? Same thing with San Antonio. Is this something you want to do because Victor is such a unique and dynamic prospect? Do you want to push that? You have De'Aaron Fox. Do you want to push that timeline forward a little bit and trade Giannis? Well, guess what? The Pelicans have the Bucks picks. So even if they trade Giannis and want to be sad, they have to in tank. They have to get their own picks in order to do that, or get picks from other teams that other players played. So that from other teams. So if they traded something to the Rockets, you want the Phoenix picks. You don't want to trade for the team who's going to be getting Giannis plus superstars picks. So the Pelicans are going to be like this draft lottery. Although you didn't get the Cooper Flag, Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper, White Whale, there's still opportunities to make your team better, whether it be through the draft or to see what that pick and other picks and other players and put things together if you want to go that route. So the Pelicans still have a lot of options in front of them. It's just not the Cooper Flag, not the Ace Bailey, not the Dylan Harper that a lot of people, including us, like we were talking about, you're only going to need to look at 4 or 5 prospects. Well, turns out you won't have to. You have to look at a couple of more. But I do think that the 7 pick, like we saw in the comments, the 7 pick is still valuable. And where the Pelicans sit is still valuable. And what they can do, they still have a bunch of options in front of them.
Right. I look at the history of the 7th pick, and you don't want to start with the guys that were drafted like last year, the last couple of years. You want to give them a couple of years to kind of show who they are as players. But even then, Donovan Cliggott had a good rookie season. Bilal Coulibaly's coming on for the Wizards. Shaedon Sharpe's coming on for the Blazers. But then you look at the history of like the 7th pick, and you have Jonathan Kuminga, who I don't know if he's great or awful or somewhere in between. I guess some team will find out this summer, because I don't think he's going back to Golden State. You have the Killian Hayes pick that was made by Troy Weaver, who is now a member of the Pelican staff. That's a little bit of yikes. But then you have like a stretch of Kobe White, Wendell Carter Jr., Larry Markkinen, Jamal Murray, Emmanuel Moore, Julius Randle. These were all 7 picks, and these are guys still playing right now in May, right? And so the idea that you didn't get 1, you didn't get 2, you didn't get 3, you didn't get 4. Oh no, the Pelicans need to light the roster on fire. I just don't subscribe to that. And the thing that you really want to look at and you really want to pay attention to, again, this is a small market. New Orleans will always be a small market. And the way that you're going to have to build your team is by getting lucky in the lottery, but also getting lucky with picks that aren't top 7, aren't top 9, aren't top 27, things like that. And that just happens to be what Joe Dumars, Bryson Graham have been good at up until this point. And so if you want to give them credit for the Herb Jones and the Trey Murphys and the Jose Alvarados, you can take Zion out of it because everybody was going to take Zion. Now you should say, well, this is the highest pick the Pelicans have had since Zion. So if you were able to find Dyson Daniels, who's the most improved player in the NBA, and you're able to find all these other guys, Trey Murphy, who every team would want right now as the prototypical player, now you get a top 7 talent. What can they do with that? And so that's what I'm interested to look at. My question to you, are there any players that jump out? I know everybody's a little upset that, you're not looking at the top of the top, the cream of the crop, but Are there any players that, hey, if the Pelicans, not say do nothing in the offseason, but do nothing with number 7 other than send their pick in and have it read by the commissioner, are there any players that before we jump into our film study, you think that might be a good fit for this Pelicans roster?
Yeah, I've seen a couple of names in the comments, and some of the ones that obviously that I like Jeremiah Fears. I like his his bounciness off the game, off the dribble, kind of the way he attacks the basket, the flashiness. I think there's a lot, and he was super duper young. He's like 18 years old, and brought Oklahoma very far in the tournament. And there was a couple of games like in the tournament he had. In the fourth quarter of a game, he had like a steal, 2 threes, an assist, another steal, and then a 3 to like put them over and win the game. So like he's a big shot guy, like a lot of confidence. He's a young guy, very small. Again, this goes to what we talked about with this team with guards. But I do think, especially if CJ is going to be gone, you're going to need somebody to be able to like create shots and get shots off the dribble. So that's why I like, Jeremiah Fears. I like Trey Johnson from Texas. I think that's another good guy. I don't know if he'll fall that far, but I do like him. I like the shooter from Duke, Knueppel, Knueppel. I like him as a shooter, movement shooter, a guy who can knock down shots. And then I like Derek Queen, the big guy from Maryland, from what he called Baltimore. I think he has a lot of grittiness and toughness to him. And a lot of touch around the basket and scoring things that his feel for the game is something that you'll be looking forward to. But again, we'll get into that. Again, I will be honest and say I don't love any of the prospects at 7. I don't. There's not any that I super duper love. And to be honest with you, the only people I really loved in this draft was obviously Coop, Ace Bailey, and Dylan Harper, and then VJ Edgecombe. They were kind of my big 4. And then after that, everybody else is kind of like, all right, these guys can really contribute. But I think like the best players is like a 4 per player draft, and then everybody else is whatever. Like they could be contributors. Michael, I know you talk about the point guard from Illinois. He's good. He's a traditional point guard. I'd have to do some more research on him. I like him, but I like the guys that I'm a little bit more. So again, those are the 4 guys that stand out to me. I don't love them. I do think that, but I also think that I don't need to love the prospect in order to fit well with the Pelicans. Because again, the Pelicans don't need a number like 1 come save the franchise option. They really don't need a number 2 save the franchise option. Now, whatever that person can contribute outside of Zion and Trey, I think that is the sweet spot for that guy. And so, I don't need to love these prospects. I do think that there are other things you could do with the pick, which we'll get into at some other point. But I think those 4 guys, Fears, Trey Johnson, Knueppel, and Derek Queen are the 4 that kind of jump out for me who might be available in that area that the Pelicans are picking in.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Michael, like you said, we see you in the comments, and we're going to do a film study on all the prospects that's going to be in this range and kind of dive a little bit deeper. But you bring up a good point. You mentioned, the Pelicans don't really need a 1 if they're not moving on with Zion. It doesn't look like they are. They're not moving off of Trey. They're not moving on from DeJounte coming off of Achilles because nobody's trading for that contract. So that's really like 1, 2, 3. So I would almost argue you're looking for best player available. But the question, and you brought it up, and so I want to talk about it. Are you looking for a guard because, CJ may be moving out or things like that? Or are you looking for someone that fits around Zion? Like, are you still at the point where we want to accumulate talent that fits around what we already have? Or are you just looking to say, hey, if the talent's all the same, let's go get a guard because we still don't trust Zion as the point guard. So really the question becomes, do you view Zion more as a guard and you need to continue to restack the wing and forwards position? Or are you looking at more as a wing and forward and you need to restack the guards because DeJounte's hurt and CJ could be gone and things like that? Where are you on that spectrum?
Well, my position is Zion is a point guard. I think that Zion is, you need to look at Zion, when you're talking about building a team and putting 5 players on the floor to start with him, I think you need to look at him as if he's Ja Morant, as if he's Chris Paul, as if he's Luka Doncic. Like, I think the days of playing him at power forward on defense, but playing him as point guard on offense, I think those days should be over, because I think, number one, you saw the best version of Zion being on the ball. Like we saw it with Stan, and then we kind of got away from it because everybody was, trying to figure out, okay, he's not in shape, he can't handle it, but like, so we need to put a point guard out there. We need somebody to do, but then everybody in the backcourt got hurt, and it was like, well, Zion, you have to be the point guard, and it was incredible. And also, I think if you play him as a point guard, or if you look at him as a point guard and put taller people ahead of him, kind of like what the Lakers did, right? Obviously, they had Austin Reeves next to Luka, but everybody after that was Rui Hachimura, LeBron, Jackson Hayes, like bigger guys. If you play Zion at the point guard position and you have bigger guys towards it, if he's initiating the offense, and let's say he's the one who gets the shot, either he shoots the shot or he generates the shot for someone else. If he's at the top of the key doing that and they miss, I don't think, like, who's getting the rebound other than Yves Missi by himself down there, like, and hopefully Trey is doing it. Whereas if you have, say, Carlo and Yves, like we saw the two bigs out there, because you're playing Zion as closer to guard than the big man. Well, if Zion's initiating the offense and he passes to an open three-point shooter and they miss, it's not incumbent upon Zion to crash from the top to go try to rebound when you have two bigs down there, right? And so he can do more in that case. So when you talk about this draft position, I don't. That's why I didn't want like a starting point guard. I don't think anybody that you draft is unless like like obviously DeJounte is hurt. But if DeJounte was playing, I don't think anybody that you draft would start at that point. So when I think about like Trey Johnson, when I think about Jeremiah Fizz, I think about like Peyton Pritchard with the Celtics. Peyton Pritchard, if like you put like the draft, if you put a healthy Celtics team and say they had like the number one pick and Peyton Pritchard was there, you would be like, well, why would you draft Peyton Pritchard? Because you got Derek White, you got Drew Holiday, you got Jason Tatum, you got Jaylen Brown. Like, you have guards and people are going to be on the floor. This is just but you've seen how valuable Peyton Pritchard's shot making, that kind of juice off the bench, that randomness outside of, the traditional Celtics ball movement. A guy that's like, nah, to hell with that. I can get a bucket. You can't guard me. That having that kind of guy come in on the floor. The Pelicans really haven't had the guy who does that is like CJ, right? Like if Zion's not getting the bucket, it's probably like CJ breaking somebody down trying to get a bucket. And outside of that, it used to be Najee. Like Najee is not here anymore, so you can't do that. So like I think you kind of need somebody off the bench to give you some juice, who doesn't need to rely on Zion to feed them or Trey to feed them. That's like, okay, there's 10 seconds left on the clock. Zion's doubled. I can go get a bucket. I can take my guy off the dribble. And I think that's important to a team. I think a lot of the teams have that. And even like the Timberwolves winning, they have Mike Conley and they tried to go get it in Rob Dillingham. And now it's Nickeil Alexander, just like guys who can get buckets in front of you. So I do think, at this point, now that it's 7, if you're going to draft, you do look for the talent, like you look for the best talent. Obviously, it would be beneficial if you could find a bigger guy that could do it. Obviously, but I do think you need that skill set versus that position, if that makes sense. That skill set is what you need to find. And if it's Derek Queen who could do it, then go get Derek Queen. If it's Jeremiah Fizz that can do it, and like there's no other great prospects available, then go ahead and do that. You're going to pay for it. None of these guys are going to be Cooper Flagg with the 99 overall and no deficiencies. So this guy is going to be deficient in something. Either they're not going to be a great passer or they're not going to be a great defender. So whoever you get at 7 is going to have an issue. And so I think if you're looking for at 7 a skill set, I think scoring, somebody who can get their own bucket is something you might want to put a premium on.
I would agree with that. Now, I'll push back a little bit, though. I do think, even though this season was a disaster for the Pelicans, you found some things. Like you mentioned someone who could both be able to score off top talent like Zion and Trey Murphy when he's healthy and things like that, but then also be able to create their own shot. You found a little bit of that in Brandon Boston, right? Like you found a little bit of that in Antonio Reeves, right? And you don't want to necessarily say, well, okay, this draft pick is obviously going to be better than those players because those are older guys. Like the other thing you got to think about is one, Willie Green doesn't like to play rookies, and two, whoever you bring in is probably going to be 19, 20 years old and not going to have the body to really contribute and to score the same way that they scored in college. And they're not going to get, knock on wood, they're not going to get the opportunities to grow through that throughout the season as well, right? And so a part of me is like, I do think they need that score. Like I've been screaming this offseason, you need to go find your Bobby Portis. You need to go find that bigger guy off the bench that can generate offense and things like that. But to your point about Zion, I have viewed Zion as a guard from the beginning. I never understood the back to the basket thing just because he's large. Like him and Cade are the same height. Him and Luka are like the same height. So like why Zion is playing the 4, I never understood, other than the fact that he weighs a lot of pounds. Like other than that, everything in his game is more tailored toward the guard. And for me, I'm looking for people who can both maximize what they do well off of him. Like you brought up like a Knueppel. I like the fact that the thing that he did the most was play off Cooper flag and catch and shoot, but also had the ability to create a own score. The thing with a Derek Queen is the scoring looks different. Like it's a little bit more old school. And I think you need a little bit of that. Cause like you got a Jordan Hawkins who's a catch and shoot. You got Antonio Reeves who catch and shoot. But like you're seeing in these playoffs, how many answers to the test do you have? And like I look at the Pelicans roster, they were 20th in rebounding last season. And to your point, if Zion wasn't out there getting the rebound, and if Eves wasn't out there getting the rebound, nobody's getting the rebound. They have 5 players over 6'8" and 5 players who weigh more than 210 pounds. Look at the playoffs right now. It is a bloodbath. Like every rebound, people are getting thrown on the court. And when do we scream all season long? The Pelicans feel like the little brother in almost every game because they're smaller, they're shorter, they're skinnier, and the other team is just punking them from rebounds. Well, drafting another 6'2", 19-year-old, it doesn't help in that area, right? 20-year-old doesn't help in that area. And so for me, like if everything is equal, to your point, I'm looking at a bigger player. I'm looking at someone who can give me something that I don't currently have today. You look at the history of what, again, Bryson Graham and Willie Green and even Joe Dumars and Troy Weaver, they are high motor, high defensive drafters. Like that's what they look for. And again, for better or for worse, you think you can teach people how to shoot or teach people how to score. I think this year has to be a little bit different. To your point, I think you have to be more open-minded that can we find someone who already has a little bit more tools in their bag offensively, and we can teach how to defend like a Trey Murphy, and we can teach how to build that next step like a Brandon Boston, like a Jordan Hawkins. I think you need a little bit more punch because, and this is the next topic I want to talk to you about, like what you're learning from the playoffs is that like you got to have more than one thing that you do well. And even though the Pelicans roster looked different last season, especially with the trade of Brandon Ingram, and it's going to look different after this offseason, like outside of, okay, you know Zion can score. Okay, you learn Trey's got a little bounce off the dribble. But then DeJounte was hurt, so you never got to see, okay, what does Eves have in the pick and roll game? You never got to learn that. Then Brandon Boston was hurt, so you never really got to see, well, he's a 6-man. All right, Carlo Makovich played with no other talent on the court. What does that look like when he's playing with other talent? To your point about Alfred Payton, you talk about someone who can facilitate and create. There's more than one ways to score. There's the guys that can come off the bench and give you 20, but then there's the guys that come off the bench and give you 5 points and 20 assists because they're able to put other people. So there's different ways to generate offense. And for me, I think the Pelicans need to find more answers and find more things of, okay, when this isn't working, we're going to go to this. Or Zion sits down, this is our new offense because this is the personnel on the floor. That's what I'm looking for. As far as like other trends that you're seeing from these playoffs that you're really learning about, okay, the NBA is a copycat league. Joe Dumars himself, he's like, the thing I noticed the most is that this season everybody's going to 2 bigs. Hint, hint, sounds like they're going to try to look at adding some more bigger players this summer. What are some other things that stand out to you to say, hey, you got to adjust with the times and you got to build your roster, go beat who's ever left in these conference finals?
Yeah, I think, if you look at the playoffs right now and you look at, what is happening, especially as you get later on, I think the point that you made is even deeper than that. I think you have to have multiple guys who feel confident stepping into shots, taking shots. And I think what what we've learned is that you have to empower those guys through the regular season. What I mean by that is last night, or the night before last, OKC and Denver are playing this game. Jokic is struggling and SGA is struggling. Who saved them? Who saved the Thunder? Cason Wallace, Alex Caruso, and Aaron Wiggins. 3 guys that do not start. Those guys came in, knocked down shots, and they were comfortable knocking down shots because they did that in the regular season. They had that kind of experience in the regular season. And then you look at some of these teams that, are top 5 heavy, or, obviously outside of the Knicks, and the Knicks are dealing with a different type of luck that they go on. They get injured and come right back incredibly. But like the Celtics, right? The Celtics found it difficult when you scheme for Jason Tatum and you scheme for Jaylen Brown, and now everybody else is kind of like, all right, we just gonna knock down, try to shoot our ways through this. And when the shots are not going, you don't have anything else to do. Whereas the Thunder have other guys that can come in and score, right? You look at the Timberwolves. The Timberwolves are the exact same way. Anthony Edwards has had a terrible first half of every game in this season. I mean, every game in this series. But it's the other guys. It's Nickel coming in and knocking shots down. It's Jaden McDaniels feeling comfortable taking over some of the reins of the offense. And so when you talk about the Pelicans and you talk about, we've seen this, right? And we're talking about Zion being a point guard and being around, and having guys that fit around him. Well, history has told us that like that's okay to bank on for 30 games, 40 games. Obviously you're hoping that breaks out. But eventually, as you get into the playoffs, you're going to need guys like Jordan Hawkins. You're going to need guys like like Jose Alvarado, like Brandon Boston, to be comfortable, to have minutes underneath their belt, to say, okay, if this is, if Zion has to sit, if Trey has to sit, if Herb has to sit for a couple of minutes to give them a break, can those guys step in? The way Christian Brown is stepping in to supplement, and Aaron Gordon is stepping in, where it's not like all on one player. And so I think depth is this has been the postseason of depth as well as depth, if you want to put it like that. But I think it's showing if you don't have, like you coined it, multiple answers to the test, and your primary answer, your primary thing is not the way that it doesn't go the way that you expect, it's going to be very difficult for you to adjust to that on the fly in the playoffs. That is so physical. Adam Silver came on TV yesterday and admitted that not only is he enjoying the physicality, but is in the playoffs, but it's not by accident. Like they are giving the okay for this physicality to go on in the playoffs. And so if that's the case, like you have to know that your guys are going to get beat up. They're going to be physical. So you have to have other answers to the test. And I think that's the kind of thing that you're seeing in this playoffs.
Right. The other thing that is very glaring to me, and again, you notice it in the Pelicans. I mean, this season is just so hard to analyze because nobody was available. So you got to be able to defend. Again, Willie Green was asked at the last press conference, like his last press conference, like, what do you do going in the offseason? How do you establish identity? He's like, well, I think we established identity. We just didn't have the players. And if you look at this identity, we've been saying it for the past couple of years, the Pelicans are best when they play bootstrap defense, in-your-face defense. They're running up and down the court, and they move the ball, right? They go inside and out. They're never going to light it up from three like the Celtics do, but as long as they're playing that way, that if you can't defend, like if you can't in the playoffs especially, you got to be able to win ugly games. Like you talked about the OKC Denver game, but there's been some other games this series where this playoff series where you're like, the score is 90-85. Like you got to be able to get enough.
OKC Denver was like that.
Yeah, you got to be able to get enough stops. And obviously the Pelicans were just like the Olay sign at a Matador this season. Anybody just triumph your way to the rim without all of their players, without Herb and DeJounte and things like that. But that's really who the Pelicans need to be. And then again, they need to continue to fill in the blanks offensively, especially losing a talent like Brandon Ingram and trying to, say that Trey's ready to make that next step, which I agree to. But still, you're taking someone who's able to create offense away, and now you're hoping Trey takes that next step with the ball in his hand. You're hoping some other guys take the next step, but you need to continue to fill in blanks there. So the other part of this, and the reason why the reason you started the pod off with, hey, New Orleans is going to be in a lot of conversations this offseason, whether it's directly, whether it's indirectly, whatever it may be, is that this summer, after these last couple games and conference finals and finals are plays, it is setting up to be one of the most active summers in a long time. And not for free agent. Like, literally nobody's a free agent. And nobody has any cap space. So everything has to be a trade. Everything. There is no, especially with the new CBA, there is no, we're going to go to someone's house and lock them in and say, you got to sign with this, like DeAndre Jordan in Dallas. Like, it's not going to be that. It's going to be a lot of moving and shaking from that standpoint. And so the name that obviously came up this week, and we talked about it a little bit already, was Giannis Antetokounmpo. And everybody knows that the Pelicans own next year and the year after swaps with the Milwaukee Bucks with the Jrue Holiday trade. And so whether it's the Pelicans going after a big name like a Giannis Antetokounmpo, because to your point, there's no other team that can offer Milwaukee, hey, look, y'all ain't going to be good next year. Dame's going to be hurt. If Giannis is out, even if you get good players back, you're still not going to be good. Nobody else can say, here's your pass to be bad again, other than the Pelicans. So that puts you at a higher level of negotiation. But then on top of that, I'm not saying this is going to happen, and this is probably not going to happen. Nobody else can offer like a Zion. There's not a lot of people that can offer that. I don't think Trey is even close to in a conversation. So you can't offer that. But then could you offer a first-team all-defensive player? Could you offer all the other picks on top of just your pick back? So there's a lot of things that the Pelicans could do to get involved with that conversation. But let's just start with Giannis, and we'll rattle off a couple of bigger names that could be on the move this summer. Do you think it's more likely that the Pelicans are going for a Giannis, or would it be more likely for them to be proactive in saying, if Giannis is going to get traded, hit us up because we know what they want and you got to give us something too?
Yeah, I think it's more the second one. I think, listen, Giannis in New Orleans would be jaw dropping. It'd be insane. I don't think you would have to give up Zion to do it. Maybe you would, because nobody else is going to offer their best player. Like if the Spurs want to get in it, they're not offering Victor Wembanyama. And if Houston gets in it, none of their players are as like superstars. So like they can offer their best players. So, but I do think that if you listen to some of the things that have come out about Giannis, about what he wants, what he wants to play again next to a star. The big markets are calling to him, obviously, after spending his whole career in Milwaukee. I don't know if that's like something he would be like, it has to be. I think he's intrigued by that, but like Giannis is global. Giannis could go play in like on St. Charles and people would pay money to watch Giannis play. So it's not a problem in that. So, but I do think that Giannis, he's at a point where, he wants to maximize the time that he has left as a first ballot, all NBA, all first team player. And so I do think that there would be a lure to him if there's some way that you could get a trade to get him to New Orleans. And he looks around, he said, well, I'm not in a big market, but I look around and I see Zion, I see Trey, I see Herb. Like there's not a lot of, who you're going to get a better roster than that. But I do think like I don't know if like New Orleans is like super duper on his list and giving up a lot where he turns around and be like, I don't want to be out here, especially if he starts to like say, I just want to be at that place. Then you start to lose value on the trade, even if if you got him for 2 years. So I worry about that. That's like literally the only thing I have worried. So because of my worry for that, I think your second best option or the thing you should do is say, hey, listen, I know all y'all want Giannis, and I know Giannis wants to play in the state with no state income tax, and Dallas is winking at him because of the team they got there, and they got the first pick, and the Spurs. Listen, no matter who for instance, the Spurs, Milwaukee. Listen, if you go to the Spurs and you're going to trade Giannis there. They're not in the same conference. It's all good. If you go to them and you get anybody other than Victor Wembanyama, your team is still going to be sad, no matter who's there. So doesn't matter, who when you're tanking if they're not bad. Now you could take like the Hawks picks that they have or whoever the case is. You could put your faith in another team, or you could say even with those guys, we're still going to be trash. So let's go ahead and see if we can get our picks back. And that is where the Pelicans would come in and say, oh, so you want your picks back, huh? And then that's what I told you. My pie in the sky. I told you I was going to mention this on the podcast. My pie in the sky. Okay, this is my pie in the sky. Conspiracy theory, never going to happen, but damn it, I would love it if it happened. Would be the Spurs say, okay, we want Giannis. The Bucks say, okay, great, but we don't really love a draft. I mean, a package built around Ace Bailey this year. Yeah. Well, no, Ace Bailey this year, or Dylan Harper, right? Like we want to play the long game and see for next year and see, in a couple years down. So they say, well, look, we want our picks back, but we'll take your guys, but we want our picks back. My pie in the sky would say, okay, great. You go to San Antonio and you say, well, listen, I would like to trade up with you. I would like to get pick 2, and then you take Milwaukee's picks, the 2 picks, and you trade that to Milwaukee with your guys. We'll take 2. They get all the picks and all of that, and you get Giannis. And I think that little 3-team triangle, that is my pie in the sky thing. So to answer your question, I think it would be super duper, and that's what I was getting to about, not loving all the prospects in this draft at 7. Is that I think that the value of Milwaukee's picks at this current climate is, I think, a little bit more valuable than what player you could get at 7. And so if the trading, if people are going to be on the move, I would see if there's a way to get something of value, whether it be getting up to get one of the guys that, I really like Ace Bailey, but like if you like Ace Bailey, or get that guy you're talking about, that scorer, that bigger guy off the bench. If there's some way you can get that pick to go to that, because I don't know if the 18-year-older, like we just talked about, the 18, 19, 20-year-older is going to contribute to the theoretical team that you have more than a guy we just, like you talked about, like a Bobby Portis type of guy, not him in particular, but if there's any other guy out there that could really help you right now, then I think that would value, that would help your value more. Because again, we talk about the Pelicans and we've been talking about how they are, this young team, and they still are relatively young as far as like age wise, but like Victor is 20, like there's a lot of like younger guys that's about to come into the league and start looking to get 100. Like Zion is 25, like those, they're still relatively young in the life cycle, but NBA years, like you are now in the, okay, like this is your window year. Like it's not, oh, you're that young up and coming scrappy 20, 21-year-olders. Like you still have a lot of runway, don't get me wrong, but you don't have as much runway as you had 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And so I think at some point, you got to say, okay, like we got to start putting something on the floor and start putting people on this floor to help, as opposed to say, well, look, we'll just keep drafting these little young guys and these small guys, and maybe 2 years from now they fell out in their body. Oh, wait, Zion's 28 now. Okay, well, look, see, and that's what I worry about when you talk about drafting. So for me, it would be more of that second option that you mentioned, kind of saying, listen, I'm here. I'm when the trade starts happening, when Milwaukee wants to be sad and wants to tank, we have the option for them to do that. Come and see about us.
I couldn't agree more. I think if there's a Giannis trade this summer, the Pelicans need to be in it. Whether it's, like I said, I don't think they're getting Giannis, but facilitating a 3-team trade of some kind. I think they need to be proactive about all the teams that want to get in the bidding war. What are you going to give up? Here's where I differ from your stance. If I'm helping to facilitate your trade, especially to the Spurs who are in my division, in my conference, and I got to see you and Giannis and Victor Wembanyama for the however many years, you are giving me a hell of a lot more than just going from 7 to 2. You are giving me like I need either more picks. I need young players. Like I need some of that because if
you can negotiate that out. Yeah, for
if
sure.
I'm giving you some high quality picks because everyone thinks that the Bucks are going to be terrible, the Bucks want to be terrible most likely next season. If I'm going to give you the alleyway to do that, I better be seeing it on the other end. Like I need to be getting a lot from that trade in between. And so you bring in Joe Dumars, who has relations with everybody in the league, every team in the league. He was brought in for his ability to navigate and his voice and his presence amongst the league. Here's where you show your chops, right? Here's the time where, again, it may not be picks, it may not be a particular player, but what value can you bring back? Because I agree, I couldn't agree with you more. The longer you hold on to these Bucks picks, the less valuable they become. And so I think this is the summer where you strike on them, especially if you're not going to hold on them for yourself. You strike on them and you get as much back that can help you now. And if you want to get another pick back, because I'm giving you a better pick, San Antonio has a gazillion picks to give up. So if it's them, if it's the Rockets, if it's any of these other teams that people have mentioned it, Dallas, I know you have a lot to give up. And if Milwaukee doesn't want that, they want what we have. Give me some Tyree Eason. Give me I need those kind of players to help facilitate that trade. Giannis is a big one. What do you think about Kevin Durant? Ties to Willie Green. The Pelicans were in the conversation before he went to Phoenix. He said he would love to play with Zion. He's talked highly about Zion. Do you think the Pelicans get in that mix?
Yeah, I think obviously that's somebody who could help a lot with the Pelicans. Coming off of an injury, but again, I know he's been, you hear about him with injuries, but he's been pretty available outside of that. I don't know if KD is at the point right yet where he's ready to take on being the guy, not the guy, but being a name on like a smaller market team like the Pelicans. I don't know if he's there yet. If he is, and obviously if that's something that he'll entertain because he's going to be looking for an extension. So you're going to have to talk to him about the extension and get a feeler for that. I mean, obviously he can do a lot with the Pelicans, and he probably won't be as expensive as going for Giannis or somebody like that because Phoenix doesn't have any wiggle room at all to do anything other than to trade him. So if that's something that he's willing to talk an extension with immediately, like I don't want to even have a conversation if he's like, well, I need to see. No, I don't want anything. But if he's like, hey, look, if Zion's going to be there and if Trey's going to be there and those guys are going to be there, then I'm down for a 2-year extension, something like a Jimmy Butler extension. Then I'm okay with that. So he's one. I know there's going to be a lot of teams that's looking to get it. I know Miami for sure will be going in and looking for him. And so I think anybody who doesn't win the Giannis sweepstakes, they're going to immediately pivot to Kevin Durant if he's still available. So you're going to have some competition. But again, the Pelicans can pretty much, if they really want somebody, they could probably outbid a lot of people, a lot of teams. So yeah, KD's interesting.
Something has to happen with the Celtics. Brutal loss with Jason Tatum getting injured yesterday. Kristaps Porzingis is probably the name that probably fits the best with the Pelicans, but his injury history his contract,
he got this weird like illness that he's dealing with that he can't stay on the floor. And if the people, I'm gonna say this, I love my city. if the medical team in Boston can't figure out what's wrong, I don't really know how much I trust like Oshner figuring out. So just keep moving.
So then you got an interesting one like Sabonis. Did that do anything for you? I mean, obviously he's a forward that is a playmaker, but he shot 40% from three.
Nah, I watched the Pelicans beat the Kings 6 times in the season. I'm good.
I'm good on Sabonis as well. I think the price tag would, like, if he was on like $20 million, but like right. I can't do a near max. So then the name that everybody wants to associate with the Pelicans, Ja Morant.
Of course.
What are your thoughts on Ja reconnected with Zion? The Pelicans make a move. The Grizzlies are open to it. What are your thoughts? Do you think they're aggressive and they try to pair the high school teammates together?
It's box office. It is.
It would be a lot of fun.
I am very worried about those two on the same team. Anyway, I just very worried. Of course, if there is an avenue to entertain a Ja Morant trade where you are not gutting all of your trade assets, I think your due diligence is to say, okay, maybe those two can hold each other accountable, maybe. But I just don't. I'm not above. Obviously, the Pelicans are not above Ja Morant. They need they need as much talent and good fortune and good players as possible. There is just circumstantial stuff that goes on in life that I just don't know. I'm worried. Let's just put it like that. I think if you can't get in on the KD and all of that, and like Memphis is like, all right, listen, we just can't do it with this guy. So like if they call you like Nico called Rob Pelinka in the middle of the night and meet up at Cafe Dumars for coffee, and y'all, then all right, then we can talk about it. But I worry a little bit about it. That's all. I just know Ja Morant, and I know what happens to athletes in the city of New Orleans. Just ask DeJounte Murray. Just ask like any Saints player ever. I'm just worried. That's all.
That's fair. For basketball reasons, I agree with you. I just don't think that's smart. For basketball reasons, I'll say this. The same thing I said above. I think Ja Morant at his best has the ball in his hands. He's not parked in the corner. He's not on the three-point line. He has the ball in his hands. Zion at his best has the ball in his hands. He's not parked in the corner. He's not parked at the three-point line. So if you put those two players together, somebody is sacrificing what they do best. And that is the thing that would deter me the most of pairing those two together. You talk about gutting the roster. I completely agree. I also think that having a small guard in the Western Conference is going to be tough because you got Anthony Edwards, you got Shea, and you got Luka, all these guys that are 6'6", 6'7", 6'8". And if your best player is 6'2", who gets injured a lot, and your other best player is 6'6", who gets injured a lot, that I don't know that raises your ceiling to say now you're a championship contender, which is why on this segment, I do not think the Pelicans need to be big game hunting. I think they just got their books clear-ish with Brandon Ingram getting traded and with CJ McCollum coming on expiring. And until you show me winning and until you show me a second round appearance, a conference finals appearance, you don't need to rush to the all-in move. Like you're in a situation where everybody's rehabbing and coming to, you need to continue to fill in the gaps and find players on good contracts and draft players well. And then once you start winning a couple, then it's like, all right, now we don't have a bunch of salary cap on our books with players who don't fit or players who are a little bit older than what our team timeline is. Now we have to find a way to move. Now it's like, okay, now we can go make our move. We still have our own picks. We still have other people's picks. We've got a healthy roster. We've got a deep roster. Now, I just don't think this is the summer where you go make a blockbuster move and say, now we've arrived. You got to win the championship next season. I just don't think this is the summer for that. But they should be in trades and they should be moving around the edges. So the Pelicans offseason has started finally. You know where they're drafting at the moment. In terms of number 7, I expect there to be a lot of moves, a lot of just across the NBA, just a lot of moves. And I expect the Pelicans to be a part of it. With that being said, we are going to keep you locked up in there. We will start our draft prospect recaps and analysis here soon. What you got left for the people, Garrick? I know it's not what people wanted to hear, number 7, but it's not as bad as people think.
Yeah, you never know what people are going through, so give someone a smile today. Yeah, man, it was not everybody won't be downtown at Champion Square with a big party going on and things like that. But yeah, man, I think the Pelicans still have a lot. There's still a lot to figure out, and the moves that we're talking about, like these aren't like moves that like may or may not happen. Like Phoenix has to do stuff. Right. Like if Giannis is asking now, Milwaukee kind of has to do stuff like right now to kind of capitalize on it. So like these are things that have to happen. And so it's gonna be some movement going on come this offseason. I think the Pelicans This is the offseason that I think everybody always dreamed about, where, you know, the Pelicans are like involved in like the main stories. And you know, whether it's directly or indirectly, they'll be referenced, there'll be calls, there'll be, you know, how do you feel about this? Things like that. Those are the things that we'll see. What if Joe Dumars, you know, everybody wanted David Griffin gone because of some of the things that he was doing. Joe Dumars is here. And in the same kind of very similar way, you know, David Griffin came with a lot of stuff available, and you know, did what either you liked it or you didn't. Joe Dumars. Now, all of a sudden, with Giannis being available, you have a lot of to play with, a lot of disposal. All of a sudden, you got the 7 pick in a draft, in a draft that you didn't come into the season thinking you were going to be 7. And so you have a lot at your hands. And so we'll see, you know, how the Pelicans spin their wheels and what's to do. And again, we'll be here covering it all. So appreciate everybody rocking with us. As always, follow myself at Garrick_Rattler. Follow my brother at Raphael_Rattler. Follow the page at NO_basketball, no E. That's wherever you get your socials. Most importantly, subscribe to New Orleans.basketball, and we'll see you guys next time.